everyone, this is Crafting with Kimmie. I'm Kimmie, and if you haven't noticed, it's almost Christmas. So today's craft is this Christmas painting. Now, I'm no Michelangelo, so this definitely isn't perfect technique, and I don't even know what perfect technique is. This is just a fun and simple craft, and I think it turned out pretty cute, so if I can do it, so can you. And what's really great about this is it makes a fantastic Christmas gift, and it's also a fun activity if you want to get your friends together for a cozy night in and just get in the holiday spirit. So something that's different about this video, as you'll see, is that it took much longer to record, so I had to speed it up quite a bit. So if you're doing this along with me, definitely pause the video, rewind if you need to, take your time with it, and just enjoy making your painting. And the last thing is that this is the debut of my intro video, which is super cheesy, but I hope you enjoy. Hit it! It's time to do a craft. It's time to do a craft. It's time to do a craft with Kimmie. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is decide what name you're going to put on your canvas, specifically on the ornaments. So the name Garcia is 6 letters long, and I'm working with a 12-inch by 24-inch canvas. So what I'm doing right now is just adding a 2-inch border on all sides, and I really don't need the 2 inches from the top, but definitely having them on the sides is important since they're going to be in a straight line, and make sure that you include that center line like I did there. Now this cup is 3.5 inches in diameter, and that just kind of worked out because this is a 6-letter long name, and 6 times 3.5 is 21, so I'm just going to have a little bit of overlap since I have 20 inches to work with, that 24 minus 2 on each side. So I just put down some paper to save my kitchen table, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to plan out your canvas before you start painting. It's really going to help your painting look polished, and you'll be happy with the finished product. Now what I'm doing is just adding some brown paint, and I'm trying to get this to look like wood. I have a lot of wood in my house, but this actually is a gift, so this person also has a lot of wood in their house, and it'll look really nice with their decor. So you can choose the background however you like. I do think that the wood looks nice and goes with a lot in a lot of different people's houses. So it's important to make sure you keep your brush strokes horizontal, since if we're going to be emulating wood, we don't want it to be somewhat vertical and then somewhat horizontal. So as you'll see, all of my brush strokes are going in the horizontal direction. So I'm just adding a coat of this brown paint all over the canvas except for where the ornaments are going to go. And this isn't actually the best paint. It was kind of diluted a little bit, so if you can opt for a nicer acrylic paint, definitely do so. Now what I'm doing is mixing in some tints and shades with white paint and black paint, and as you'll see, I'm taking my time mixing them here because I added way too much black. So definitely keep mixing until you get it just the right color. So now I'm adding that darker shade around the edges of the canvas, and this is because I want to have the center where the ornaments are to be a little bit lighter, because I think that'll really make them pop. So only adding the darker shade of brown to the edges. And I let that dry a little bit. And I have my little cup of water here, so I'm about to paint with the lighter color. I'm going to wash off that darker brown. So as you saw, that first tint that I used was too light, so then I added some more brown. And I'm just filling in the spaces between the ornaments now. And just slightly above as well. again using those horizontal strokes. Now I'm filling in the middle space between the dark and the light with that first shade of brown straight from the paint bottle, and I'm just putting it in the middle. Now I was using horizontal strokes, and now I've switched just to outline the edges of the ornaments and then filling in between each ornament with the horizontal strokes again, trying to keep it as horizontal as possible. And the nice thing about wood is that it's not perfect. So if you have a couple streaks of that lighter or darker color, that can reflect natural wood, so that's perfectly fine. And just taking your time to really blend the brown colors. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the black or even the really dark brown, and I'm just going to add some lines. There's the lines. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this. I don't really know where they should or shouldn't go. Some longer, some shorter. It can be however you want. Now I have started with the colors. So of course I picked red and green, but for a different painting that I've done, I did shades of different reds and shades of different greens. And that one I actually used a 12 by 36 inch canvas, and that's because the name I was working with had 11 letters, so it was much longer than this one with 6. So this one is fine with just a smaller canvas. And again, take your time with this and add a couple coats. You really want the ornaments to pop. And if you'll notice, I'm also doing my painting in a circular direction because I want to mimic the sphere of the ornaments. You can really tell with the brush strokes, horizontal for the wood versus this circular direction for the ornaments. Now I've started with the red. And another thing to notice, because I am going to have these overlapping, it does matter what order you do them. So you'll probably picked up on the pattern, but I'm doing red, green, red, green, red, green. And I don't want it to be sequential, all the reds overlapping over all the greens, because I think that looks maybe too predictable. So what I've done here is did the greens first, or this is really a teal shade, and then I'm going to do the 3 reds and then save one of the greens for the end. And that way it doesn't look too much like a pattern. I kind of like the idea of having them randomly arranged. Again, overlapping just a little bit. Okay, so now that the red is dry, I'm going to add this final teal ornament. And now I'm just adding black to the edges because they looked unfinished. So because the edges are our darkest part of the wood, this blends pretty nicely. Okay, so now we can add the letters once all of our ornaments have taken their time to dry. So I am freehanding this, but definitely feel free to write it with pencil first. What I really like about this font that I'm trying to emulate is that the G here, and you'll see the C is the fourth letter, they are following the curve of the ornaments. So I like a good bubbly font for this project just because I think it goes well with the circular shape of the ornaments. The A is kind of pointy, so it works for the G, maybe not for the A. Really just use your best discretion for this. And what I'm using to write the letters is this wooden stick. This I think is actually for taffy apples. So it's got one end that is a circle and the other end is sharp like a point, almost like a pencil. So I'm just taking the end that's a circle and using that. That makes a good weight for the letters. So it keeps all the letter sizes consistent. As you'll see for the cursive in a little bit, I use the pointed end. Another thing you could do instead of using paint and this wooden stick would be to use a paint pen as an option too. And I did have a little bit of a technical difficulty there. The camera wasn't recording for when I added the tops of the ornaments, those silver little rectangles, but those are really simple. All you have to do is just follow the curve of the ornament and just do 2 brush strokes with the silver. And then you'll see there I wrote in pencil first for the cursive, and now I'm adding the white paint. You can make this calligraphy if you choose. I just thought I would keep it a consistent weight for the letters. All I'm doing here is just taking some paint, putting it on the sharp edge, and then transferring it to the canvas. So it is kind of a tedious process because there isn't any ink in this wooden stick, it's just the stick. So every time I want to add more paint, I have to dip the stick into it. I really like the look of the cursive against the bubbly letters of the ornaments. I think that that's a good pair. And what I'm doing here is adding a little bit of a highlight for where the light is coming in. So all this is just the metallic paint added with a little bit of water and then a little bit of the white. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom in a second here, but instead of adding white, I'm going to add a little bit of black, and that's going to help make the shadow for the bottom of the ornament. And what I did was I wrote the word "the" first and then moved my way down to the highlights and the shadows so I could let the word "the" dry. And this helps with efficiency for the painting as well. And now, while I'm letting that dry, I can write the bottom word, which is family. And here I've added a little bit of a lead-in before the first letter F, and I think that that helps make it look a little bit fancy and whimsical. Again, all I'm doing is taking paint, putting it on the tip of the wood, and transferring it to the canvas. And it's a little bit difficult to see, but I did, again, write this out in pencil first. Definitely not freehanding it, and I don't recommend freehanding it just because you want to keep a consistent line for the bottom of all the letters so you don't have any drifting up or down. And you'll see I just tapped the tip of the wood on the paper because I was getting some buildup of paint. So if that happens, just wipe it off and you can keep going. You don't want it to get too thick because then that affects the size of your letters. You want them to be consistent. Another good thing to keep in mind, and I actually didn't do a great job of this with this painting, but I was happy with how the letters looked, is you want to make sure that you're centering all of your words with the ornaments. So I probably could have moved the M to be directly underneath the R and the C. It's a little bit to the left, and so I'm making up for that with the length of this curly Q at the end of family. But that's something that's beautiful about crafting, is that this is handmade, and so it isn't perfect, but I think it has a little bit of character to it, and that just helps make it that much more special. So one of your last steps is just adding this cute little holly to the top. And all I'm doing here is, you'll see I started with 3 strokes in different directions with the green, and then I added some swooping curves for each of them, and that gives that holly shape. So I've got 3, and then eventually I will add the berries to that in the spaces where the leaves aren't. I'm going to add one to the other side for symmetry. And what I'm doing now is just adding little hooks to the tops of the ornaments with a Sharpie. And I added a little more of that silver paint to really get it to pop for the tops of the ornaments. The last most important step is to add those cute little berries. And you'll see I'm even going to add one to the eye, to dot the eye, for a little extra whimsy. And the very last step to keep the highlights consistent between the ornaments and the berries is just to add a little bit of the highlight to the upper right hand side of each of the berries.